So what is the first thing coming out your mind right now?
You know what? Enjoy this moment because, we worked our butt off to, get to this moment. And, I know. Let's go.
His daughter is crying.
I know, because she know how much it means to me. And we talked about this, and I'm so happy for you. Let me get it. Mwah. Super Bowl. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. What is the first thing coming out your mind right now?
All right, welcome in. Thanks to CBS Sports HQ for that audio and video. Former Wolverine Brandon Graham on the field at the Link in Philly after the NFC Championship game yesterday. Congratulations to Brandon Graham on his way to his second Super Bowl. Welcome in on this January the 30th here. Good afternoon, Michigan football and basketball. Most people watching this, you're Michigan fans, and so you'll be a fan of Brandon Graham. You'll feel good for him. And you might say things like, he's a good guy. And I've never met Brandon Graham, but I would say that he seems like, I watch videos of him. I've heard a few interviews with him. Brandon Graham sounds like a great guy. And anytime I hear him, a family man. I can remember when he was interviewed after the Eagles won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago against the Patriots. And I can remember him, being asked about what it meant to him and what he had seen in the city of Philly. And he was telling a story about how these old men were just coming up to him. I don't know how old they were, but he was like, old men were just coming up and crying. They were like, boo-hoo, crying and thanking him for finally getting in the winner's circles as Eagles fans. And, he appreciates it. And it's great to see that, his daughter just a couple of years ago, like now she might know what the Super Bowl is and all that. But that's congratulations go out to the Eagles and to Brandon Graham. Great job by Philly being able to get there. They're a 2-point favorite over Kansas City. We're actually going to have a question of the day that revolves around football. As I was watching it yesterday, and what I think the story of yesterday was, at least how it's playing out overnight. And we'll get to that in just a minute. I got some organ playing in the background with fireworks. I didn't know what it was, but now I do. I'm all set. We're ready to go here. So what else are we going to be talking about today? Well, Michigan basketball. They struggled in Happy Valley. I have a word or two on the roster. We have National Signing Day coming up on a Wednesday. Most of the hay is in the barn for Michigan, but there's still some thoroughbreds out there that maybe they can corral. We'll talk about that. And the latest in some recruiting buzz. We'll start with Michigan, who has rounded out their coaching staff. Jim Harbaugh has. We found out on Friday. We'll get to that. Here's the question that I'll throw out to you. Yesterday, everybody seemed like online were they were complaining about the officials. They were complaining about the Devontae Smith catch in the first game in the NFC Championship game. Although to me, they didn't see it until 5 minutes later. They're showing some view that were we really going to sit around for 5 minutes and have to look at that one? So I didn't really know about that one. Of course, there were some missed calls, but people up in arms about a grounding call where the ball may or may not have got back to the line of scrimmage. It was tough. And if it didn't, and he was in the tackle box, I could see why they threw the flag. It was close. And then the other one they didn't like, you could want the Bengals. You could have wanted the Bengals, and you'd be upset, in Cincinnati, thinking that every call went against us. We know how that goes. But a lot of people didn't like that late hit at the end, and I like the argument here. Like officials totally suck. They should have let that one go because the game was on the line. So you want the officials when a call is a call, even an egregious call. Like that was an egregious late hit. We've seen some where it's close, where like, did you really have to call it? Mahomes was head 2 feet out of bounds, and he threw him into the stands. I think that was pretty black and white. But no, pick that one up. Let it go. So I don't know. I didn't have and I wanted Cincy. I had some stake in Cincy there, but I wasn't throwing up my arms like, oh my God, this is the worst call of the world. But, a lot of people have shows like this. They have to have something. When people say you got to create content, you got to have some controversy. What's more controversial than saying the refs blew it, at the end? They suck. But I will ask you, and we all feel that way when we watch the games at times, some a little bit more than others. But I wanted to ask you, how do we get better with the referees and the games? If you have any ideas, we'll go over that. It could be college football, college basketball, Michigan games. If the refs just called more plays for Michigan and stop being so biased against Michigan, that would be a nice start, right? When we get those refs to call it the maize and blue way, things would be going a little bit better. But how do we get better officiated games? That's a question for you out there that you can answer. Well, so you see and saw the news that Kirk Campbell, who was an offensive assistant quarterback analyst last year for Michigan, with all the names and how it took, it ended up being an in-house promotion for Kirk Campbell, who's now going to be your quarterback's coach. He had spent he was at Penn State for a minute. He also spent 2 years as an offensive coordinator at Old Dominion, but he will be the quarterback's coach. And so what do you think of this hire? You wanted a bigger name, like we talked about T. Martin, Brian Greasy, the guy out at Stanford, others. And when we were talking about this, I remember saying that getting the input of J.J. McCarthy, getting the input of other quarterbacks that are on the roster, other quarterbacks potentially that could be on the roster, that sounded like something that would be in order for Jim Harbaugh. How do you figure out if you have somebody that already has the experience, somebody that doesn't have the experience here, what kind of recruiter they're going to be? That's what it takes when you're the man in charge, to be able to figure that out. It's like, how do we know that Kirk Campbell will be a good recruiter? We don't. I mean, how do you know somebody's going to be good at the job until you get him out there? Maybe he's a very personable person. Sometimes, you can just connect. And, you see that. You can go to school. You can try to be as, well-learned and people person, and then you get out there and you just don't resonate, with kids. So we'll find out about that. Anybody that tells you like, oh yeah, he'll be a great recruiter. Okay. Why would you say that? Well, he's a real smart guy. Okay. I know a lot of smart people, smarter than me, that you have a conversation with and you're like, okay, you're smart and everything. Maybe you make a lot of money. I don't want to listen to you anymore. And yet there's other people who are just really good. You just gravitate towards them. You want to hear what they have to say. So we'll see on that. One of his comments I put up on the screen, Campbell, he says, I look forward to helping Team 144 reach new heights in 2023. Good enough for me. Let's see how he does. Let's see what the people are saying. Always you can get in on the feedback any way it goes. We want to get on the ref comment, the new quarterback coach. We've got basketball coming up that we're going to get to, and some recruiting buzz. Antoine says I was wrong when Michigan went with the analyst. I figured they wouldn't pick an extremely big name, but Kirk Campbell was a surprise. The word is JJ gave him major support. The word is, according to Antoine, yeah, well, that wouldn't be a surprise to me. I don't think it's a surprise when you have somebody that's on the staff, like, how they operate, and then you can also talk with people. So, in-house promotion isn't the worst thing. You get some firsthand knowledge of that. So, you saying that the word is JJ gave major support. That wouldn't be a surprise to me either. The Gladiator says support is one thing, development of players for the next level is another thing. Look around and see what other top 5 programs are doing in this respect. Well, I don't know. Are you telling me that Michigan is putting some guy that's wet behind his ears at quarterback coach, and this was a bad move considering what Alabama has at their quarterback coach or something else? So, yeah, I don't know about that. One thing, like sometimes you see this, and I'm going to get this with Juwan Howard. Like Juwan Howard in his second year with Michigan, had a good recruiting class, and Michigan won the Big Ten, without any fans in the stands. They won the Big Ten, and then they went on and almost got to the Final Four. Came within a Franz Wagner shot. Actually, they had like 3 shots in the last, I think, 45 seconds to where they would have had a chance to go to the Final Four. And it was a wonderful year, man. I loved how the team played and how hard they went after it. It looked like they were really well coached, and all these different things. And now, we fast forward to right now, and people are like, "Oh, John Howard doesn't know how to coach. Staff, has no idea how to develop players." And you say something like, "Well, yeah, well, what about that second year when they won that's John Beilein's team." It was John Beilein's team. So I say that because, like, maybe Campbell, he's coming into a great spot. I mean, he's got J.J. McCarthy, over there. What's it take, to be able to take JJ to the next level? You never know until you put a guy into that situation. I'm not going to be negative about the hire because he's not a name or because it was an in-house promotion. I won't do that. If I see a drop-off at quarterback play or something shaky out there, then I might say, well, what's Harbaugh doing? What's different? Well, Campbell would be, I'm not looking for a fall guy, but he could be one of the reasons there. So, I see what you're saying, but that doesn't, totally make me think that it was a bad promotion. Treppa says I couldn't find any Michigan content creators. That doesn't make any sense to me. Kurt does have a little bit of experience with Old Dominion, and I do like their offense. Hopefully he can influence ours a little bit. However, I don't know if he was an integral part of the offense. Well, I could tell you for a lot, if JJ's throwing the ball a lot more, if Michigan is pushing the ball down the field, and lighting up the scoreboard even more, then you'll say, okay, this is the guy. I think JJ taking the next step. We saw it against Ohio State. It is developing the passing game more, hitting shots down the field. They did it against Ohio State. I think they would want to continue to do that. And that, I don't know if that's the number one challenge is JJ. There's a lot that goes into playing that position, but being able to marry up the routes and the designs and being able to hit the passes, however, what all that goes into, we'll see it. We'll see it and see if they're if he's going to be able to do that. Let's see. Andres was talking about the hit on Mahomes. Says that was a late hit. Treppa says I couldn't find any post-game videos on the Michigan basketball loss to Penn State except yours. Not even. Well, people were probably getting ready for the football games and everything else. So I don't know. I didn't know there was anybody else that did post-game videos on Michigan, honestly. I know that Ant, the former Wolverine, is on Twitter after he's on halftime. I think he's he might be on before the game. He's on at halftime. He's on after the game. He is a Twitter expert when it comes down to that. There's, yeah, okay. I hear it. I hear it. Andre says, all I have to say is this: go back and watch Michigan cut-ups on YouTube for this past season. JJ was on the money so many times, and receivers were not just converting receptions. You mean they just weren't catching the ball? Is that what you're saying? Michigan's receivers need to catch the ball better. I think in that Rutgers game, there was, I would say that the Illinois game as well. Like, I've already said this myself, that if the JJ throws the ball and plays like he did against Ohio State for the whole season next year, it's going to be a great year for Michigan. But I don't know if that's exactly your point or not, Andres. But if we go back to the game before Ohio State, everybody agrees he was great. If you go to the game before Illinois, not so great. That was a real nail biter. But if you think about the pass that they put on Andrell Anthony, who was double teamed, Anthony had stuck his hands up right at the goal line, and it almost banged off his head. I mean, he could have, should have had that one. It would have been a nice catch in traffic, but that was a really good throw by McCarthy. Before that, Nebraska, I don't know. I'm trying to think if there was any missed shots downfield. Against Rutgers, there certainly was. There was one down the left sideline to Amarian Walker, who, went down to his knee, kind of fell between. And there might have been at least one to Anthony over the middle where it was kind of his outstretched hands. Oh, yeah. And then there was another one that was down the seam that was catchable. And I think it was to Ronnie Bell. And I'm not sure, or it could have been a Kojo, actually. I think it was Kojo. I wasn't 100% sure if that was on the route or if that was a bad throw. You'd have to talk to those guys what they were trying to do there. It looked like, the ball was, it was pretty hot, but he could have been bailed out. We wouldn't have talked as much about McCarthy and the downfield passing game. He just wasn't able to hit it. And then, that you start pressing when things like that happening, when things like that are happening. Steven says, if he does the job well, it's a good hire. I like promoting from within, but don't know enough about it until we see some on-field action. Andre says they should watch the tape. Michigan should take a huge step forward in the passing game. Trepo says, will Michigan miss Matt Weiss in any way? Yeah, I don't know. Like, Matt Weiss was around for 2 years, quarterback coach, and then as a offensive coordinator, we're not 100% sure that collaboration and how much he was involved in the actual play calling. So, there's some uncertainty there with how that actually played out. There's a lot of people that feel like Matt Weiss was the one that was calling all the plays, and they could talk about a collaboration. Certainly, Sharon Moore could have been, relaying some of whatever the calls were, his ideas, but ultimately somebody had to make the call. I mean, how else do you think when you start talking yourself through it? Did Moore have one series and then that flip-flop over the Weiss? That doesn't seem like that would be very smart, productive, all kinds of problems. How do you get into a rhythm as a play caller? All those things. So I do think it was just one of those guys making the calls, and I do think it was Weiss. So I think it could be, now that Moore is going to be the guy, and there might be some collaboration as well, where people will be like, hey, what about this play? What about that play? But ultimately, he's going to have to look at the sheet, and he is going to have to make the call. So that could be, I would say, and since we don't know for 100%, I'm just giving you my opinion on it. You want to hear somebody else say, no, this is exactly the way it went. Okay, there you go. That's your opinion. My opinion is that Sharon Moore calling the shots now. He's got a nice offense and he's got a lot of material to work with. But until you have the headset on, until you are the guy calling all of the plays and have to get into that rhythm and you're on the spot and everything else and there's no one else, you don't know. So just like with Campbell as the quarterback coach, we don't know with Sharon Moore. And, maybe it'll be a lot more comfortable because maybe they did have some kind of like, all right, you make the call. Let's flip, I don't think they were flipping a coin. But, maybe it'll be much more relaxing for Sharon Moore now. And he'll be just like, okay, I got this. He certainly has got the experience now where he'll be able to do it. How the mechanics of the coaching and as a quarterback coach, I mean, that's your guy. And what Michigan was able to get out of the quarterback position for the last 2 years, what they did in the end, they were able to get a Big Ten championship. And it wasn't just with one guy. So they were able to work Weiss was working with two guys. He helped along Cade McNamara, whatever you think about it. And then, of course, with JJ as a first-time starter, really both of those guys as first-time starters. So, that I don't I know there's a natural indication of just like or a natural reflex. It's not like that's just at Michigan, but Michigan fans get blamed for this a lot, and I think they're guilty. I think we're all guilty of it. Matt Weiss, he'll be easily replaced. He will. He wasn't that much of a recruiter. I hear that. Maybe he wasn't. Anybody could call the plays. Whatever they were doing with Sharon Moore, Moore will just take it over. Everything will be fine there. Quarterback coach, even though he worked with two different, quarterback coach, fine. So maybe that's a good question. The one part where they might regret Matt Weiss is if something happens with that cyber fraud that's going to affect the football team. Now, right now, we don't know until we find out more details. The hope for Michigan football is whatever he was doing was on his own, whatever the crime or, whatever he was doing was just, it's just going to follow him out the door and it's not going to affect the Michigan football program. I think that's the hope right now. And I don't have any reason to think that, this is going to bring Michigan. I don't have any of that. So, but I mean, it's there and it's something that you at least have to know that's out there until it ends up getting resolved. So, Matt Weiss says there's a lot of, I don't want to say potential baggage. There's just that's hanging over that situation. And as far as, he was he was pretty involved in the Michigan offense the last 2 years. So when people just turn to the page like, who cares? No effect. And, if you remember going back to last year at this time, there were a lot of people like, wow, Michigan finally broke through against Ohio State. But wow, look at this offseason. They lost their offensive coordinator. They lost their defensive coordinator. They lost Hutchinson, the second overall pick. They lost. No way that they'll be able to come back and, and duplicate what they did a season ago. And it's all about the head guy. It really is. And the head guy and how he delegates and who he's picking. So we've seen it with somebody referenced top 5 programs. We see it all the time in top 5 programs. If you are a top 5 program and you're there a lot, other programs, they're coming after your coaches. So that's part of it. And so that Michigan was able to slide guys into those positions last year at the very top, the coordinators, and move everybody else around. It was something that doesn't get talked about a lot. And they did a good job last year at that, right? A good point from the coach. Everybody has to get their start somewhere. That's right. And, you put your trust in the head coach. That's the way to do it. And you put your trust in a coach who, you could talk about, hey, I like how Harbaugh does this. I like how he does that. Harbaugh, when it comes down to the assembly of the team and the getting them in the right positions, the game day coaching, I have a lot of confidence in he knows how to do all that. Personnel, moving and shake. He's good at that. Game day, game decisions, in-game decisions, very good at that. Some of, but he's not perfect at everything. But all of that, which is really important, that stuff is good. DTWA Sports Talk. The passing game has to stop feeling like pulling teeth. Yeah, let's have the passing game. I would like a passing game that you wouldn't say that, Detroit. I would like when you talk about Michigan's passing game next year to be explosive, eye-popping. I don't know if that might be going too far. Explosive is a nice one, though. It is, dangerous, lethal, eye-popping, effective, complimentary. Maybe you get some more words for me. Just thinking about it. Here's a word on basketball. I have a bunch of glorified bench players. OT, JJ threw so many overthrows. He had more overthrows than the receivers had drops. I'd have to go back and look at every throw, but I agree with this. I think, like you think about some of those, he was just wasn't able to put the ball on the receivers. And then when he did, there were some drops. And then there were some that were just like, I think of some of those to Anthony against Rutgers, just off his fingertips, or, Kojo, maybe the ball a little bit too hot. A lot of things go into the passing game. So, I hear you on all of that. All right, let's see. Braden is asking a question. Harbaugh's announcing tomorrow or Wednesday. What time do you expect that? We'll get to Nyckoles Harbaugh coming up in the in the buzz, Brandon. So stay tuned for that. I like somebody jumping in, wants to know the latest on Nyckoles Harbaugh. Scott is predicting that Nyckoles Harbaugh is going to pick Michigan tomorrow. Brandon pointing out that teams need to fear the pass. Having a passing game that other teams fear. That sounds pretty good for me. Scott, he wants to rally around Juwan Howard like that. Lyle talking about the hockey team sweeping Penn State, giving him some applause. Brandon following up saying Michigan is the only school that wants him at wide receiver. Everyone else is tight end or defensive end. This is a little Nyckoles Harbaugh talk. Yeah, well, Brandon, if you missed my thoughts last week, when you get a guy like Nyckoles Harbaugh, if Michigan was asking me about the recruiting pitch and what position I think he should play, I would say when you get a guy like Harbaugh, it runs the way, it is the kind of athlete that he is, you let him come in and try to play any position that he wants. He looks like he can play every position on the field. So, if he wants to come in and play wide receiver, you let him come in and try and play wide receiver. I'm with you on that. And if other teams are whatever, they will say, no, we think you're more of a defensive end. We're not even going to let you play wide receiver. That doesn't seem like a good approach to me. Here's some basketball. I saw this. I didn't think much about it. Account 22 is saying Jett was wearing a huge necklace on the sidelines when he wasn't injured. When he was injured against Purdue, and it says a lot. He's got quotes around injured. Well, you know what I'd say, Account 22 is I see what your point is. I think the other thing is that college sports have changed. Like 2 years ago, if a guy had a chain on and he wasn't playing, you'd say, wow, that looks like a real expensive chain. Where'd he get that from? Well, you can have anything you want now. And the lines are blurred a little bit from professional to college. Both of them are, the games, they're both getting paid. And, Jett's dad's probably got $100 million in the bank. And I don't know, Jett is, looks like he's destined to, get about 10 million coming up next year. So would you like a rule that nobody should wear a hat indoors and no chewing gum and everybody's got to wear a suit and tie on game day and no change during the game? I mean, I get that. You can say, okay, that doesn't bother me. The having a gold necklace on the sideline. But honestly, I'm somebody that's not that big into, I've never run a business or been in charge of employees. There's some people that are really into the, you got to dress and, that kind of stuff. And there are a lot of coaches that are like that too. I had a program director one time, he was, I remember the first day I went in to meet him, I looked on the wall and he had a framed picture of like this Dale Carnegie course that he went through. And I knew kind of like I thought Dale Carnegie, successful guy, how to dress and talk, for success and kind of things. So I'm like, okay. But immediately he got into, he's like, you always got to wear a collared shirt and dress pants. And, I was wearing jeans and I was like, we're on the radio. He's like, no, I don't want a press shirt. He was saying, he's like, that's what Dale Carnegie always said. So I was like, what? This guy's a clown. That was my first impression of him. And I wasn't too far off, to tell you the truth. But no, people are like that. I remember my high school basketball coach, he didn't allow us to wear hats in the gym. It was really big on that. Certainly not a baseball hat, not even a winter hat. No hats. This is our place, We'll respect it, kind of thing. I didn't like that rule, so I'm not really into those kind of things, but I know there are a lot of people. I think that Account 22, if we took a poll, I don't think it would be like some landslide, like 90% of people are like, who cares? Let him wear a chain if he wants to. I think it would be closer to 50% where people would say that. Like, where does it stop? If I was a high school coach and a kid wanted to wear a gold chain with his number on there, would I say tuck that chain in or no chains, no chains on the bench during the game? Yeah, that might be the least of Michigan's problems, but like I say, here's somebody predicting me to go to WJR. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's see. It doesn't bother Andres, but if you do that and the team struggles, you should expect to get roasted. It's a reason why I think college sports is suffering. You can't operate with these kids like college kids. They're pretty much professionals. All right. Well, there's a point there. I'm going to make my point. I hadn't seen many people weighing in on what to do with officials, so I'll give you my opinion. And like I said, I already thought, like with the Mahomes late hit, I thought that was, let's say, a good call. It was the correct call, and I don't have any problem. If it was a little bit like closer, because it was clearly a hit out of bounds and on the quarterback in that spot, I think you have to throw the flag. And I think 99 out of 100 officials would have. Maybe that's a little bit high, but that's how I feel about it. How do they do a better job with referees? We all complain about them. You know what they need to do is they need to work more at their craft. The problem when it comes down to this is that, like any business, the NFL and college basketball and college football, they all make an awful lot of money, but they all want to keep a lot of their money too. And you always want to be elevating, even if you're making, I don't know, what does an NFL team make? $100 million, a year for the owners. To the next year, they say, well, we're going to project you to just make, 99 million because we're going to take $1 million for everyone because we want these officials. We're going to use it on training with the officials. No, you always want your profile and your value as an owner to go up. Now, if it's going to affect the product, and I think it's pretty easy to justify when you're an owner. If you're somebody watching these games, it's like every game, the losing team, their fans are like, this is rigged. I'll never watch another game. This is a joke, conspiracy theories. Now that you have the gambling that's involved in there, everybody thinks that everybody's on the take. Everybody's always thought that. I mean, there's always been great hysteria about it. The thing they could do is NFL officials are not full-time. If they had these guys working all year long, and if they were using the latest technology and practicing some of these, they had the Kadarius Toney non-catch in the end zone where the one official was blocked and the other one came in. They did a nice job of being able to communicate that, and they ended up making the right call, working with the video guy in your ear to be able to make the correct call. I think they're already doing that. I think there would be a lot more conspiracy theory if we knew actually what these officials were saying to each other in their earpiece or whatever else. But there's a lot of that they could work on, the technology, the training. And if they did that year round, and then they brought that to the people and said, look, this is what we're doing. We're having these officials work at it. We're doing mock games. We're watching the video. All of these things that we're piecing together, we're trying the different aspects of the speed of the game and getting it correct, where then when you get into the games, you can say, hey, they are really trying to do everything they can. Because right now, the officials that were judged to be the best, they throw together in these championship games, and it's like, they do the same thing in the Super Bowl. And the rest of these guys are like, okay, let's party. We got, spring break. They're out calling college basketball games, and I don't know what they do in the summer. They just sit around. Probably that's official watching saying we do a little bit more than sit around, but the point remains, like the all officials with professionals, they could try to do more, and it is going to cost them money. That's what it's going to come down to. So I think they think the people are always going to complain, which they're correct about. But if they were trying to do everything that they could to get the best people and work year round at it, sometimes you need a little break, vacation, always have your mind on, okay, was that a hold or whatever else? But that's my point. That's what I think they need to do. Andre's talking about things are shady. This is what people think. KC, the networks. This is always a nice one. Let's see. Philly is a big market. KC is a big market. San Francisco is a pretty big market. And Cincinnati, I get it with Cincinnati. Now, we know what's Cincinnati. Cincinnati's in Ohio. That's the armpit of America. Nobody likes Ohio. I'll buy it there. We wanted KC in their angle. Brandon says he thinks the refs in the AFC Championship game were legit. Other than KC could have been called for holding more. Eagles 49ers, a different story, but the fourth string quarterback doesn't matter. Yeah. Well, also the Eagles, not the Eagles, but the 49ers could have challenged that Devontae Smith catch, and nobody saw it till like 5 minutes later. So, and I tell you, when a receiver gets up and makes the catch and starts running up to the line and does something like, maybe you should get your guys on the video. And, that's part of being a good coaching staff. Whoever's sitting up there being able to watch the video monitor, they have to determine in the time whether they're going to buzz down and challenge a call pretty early in the game. It was the first drive, whether they're going to do it or not. Eli Apple holds a lot anyways. Yeah, well, just consider where he went to school. That unsportsmanlike conduct penalty won the game for KC. It would have been 3rd and long at best. And yet, is that the one where he was, there was some where he was punching in there. Let's see. Burrow gets hit late and crickets from the refs. Yeah, I think that they had a conversation to that point. I can't speak specifically, about what call you're talking about, but if you watch the NFL during the regular season, there were a lot where a quarterback would get, grazed. And boop, there comes the flag. And then in the playoffs, there wasn't a lot of that. And so if you watch the regular season, then you were watching that game yesterday and watching Burrow. Jones, the one time, took him, and he would have got called. In fact, he did get called for that during the regular season. I think it was on a Monday night. Everybody was up in arms. They relaxed they had a meeting and conversation about, hey, let's not just be so trigger happy on the defensive players. And, I think they might go back to it and say, look at Burrow, barely made it out of the game. Mahomes is banged up, all those kind of things, that stuff. So that's it. You always get into that, like, it doesn't really matter what the players are saying. None of extra motivation or anything else. And yet, the Bengals' rallying cry in this game is that the league didn't want us in here because we're Cincinnati. They were going to, they don't want us in the game. We got disrespected. Look at how they worked the playoff formula with Baltimore and everything. So, they had a chip on their shoulder that way. Mahomes had one on his shoulder about Cincinnati calling Arrowhead Burrowhead. so much so you say, that stuff never matters. The first thing they did after the game when Mahomes was on the mic said, "This isn't Burrowville," and some offensive lineman came up and said, "This is Arrowhead." So they took that. I know it doesn't mean anything. It was to go to the Super Bowl anyways, but people are always like, "Nah, it's meaningless." Well, it was meaningless, but they all brought it up right after the game. So there you go. What's up, Chase? Where you been, man? The good news, Chase, is you can always go back. The podcast posts about 10 minutes after the show. The VCast, the video cast, is there for you at all times. So, you're late, but you're really never late because you can go back. And I think you can get the videos all the way back to November 1st, 21. Those videos are available. Let me get you on to basketball really quick. There's just 10 games left in the regular season for Michigan, and there's the Big Ten tournament, and it's pretty symmetrical for the way to break things down. They have 5 games at home, and there's 5 on the road. Their next game is Thursday at Northwestern. Michigan's record is 11-10. If they finish 500 the rest of the way, 16-15 heading into the Big Ten tournament, they would need to get to Saturday at least. That would be needing to win 3 games. You think sometimes 18 wins, you feel like they get it, but I would say 19 with a possibility there. So out of these 10 games, just going 5-5, they're going to have to do a little bit better than that. And if you're going to want to feel good, of course, anything can happen. But here's what I think about the players. And I'll look at the roster 1 through 12. I'll give you a point on each player. First, Hunter Dickinson. I think Hunter hit a plateau last year. He can still be dominant at times. He's U of M's best player. When you're the best player and you get the most touches, a lot's to be expected of you, especially the way he played when he was a freshman. But different games and sometimes a little bit different issues. Sometimes he's not ready to go at the beginning of the game, or they get him the ball and the other teams are taking the ball out of his hands. Other times he seems a little bit rushed and he doesn't know exactly where he is on the floor, and he seems like he's turning it over. Sometimes it doesn't seem like he's strong enough with the ball. These are the things I'm talking about where I want to see a little bit more from Dickinson, and yet he is the team's best player and he can be dominant at times. That's what I think about Hunter. Jett, who was fabulous in the first half yesterday, he couldn't miss, and he's got all the moves. He'll throw a series of step backs on you, Euro step, finger rolls, teardrops. I mean, he's got all of that, and he can shoot it from anywhere on the floor. But he disappears for too long in stretches. But he's young, and anybody would want him on his team, and the NBA is certainly going to want him. He's got an NBA type game, but. I got him at number 2. That's my thought. Number 3 is Bufkin. He's shown nice overall improvement from last year. Could develop in the years ahead as Michigan's best player and their number 1 option out on the floor. That's the way he has been improving, keeping it going. This is the starting lineup. Doug McDaniel, the freshman, about what you'd expect for a freshman point guard. Shows some nice promise. Rounding out the starting 5, Terrence Williams II. He's best suited coming off the bench for a tournament team. Not consistent enough. He's this year we've seen enough of that. Sometimes it seems like he's coming on, and then there's just long stretches where he's not getting it done. They need more when you're playing starters minutes, unfortunately, for TW2. Everybody, talking about recruiting, which is coming up. We'll get to Nyckoles Harbaugh. You want to know the latest people that are working the phones, talking with people that know about what's going on in recruiting. Josh Henschke, Trevor McHugh, Seth Berry, our staff with looking on recruiting, leaving no stone unturned. You want to know what's going on there? Join the Maize and Blue Review. Go to michigan.rivals.com. You can get all of that going right now. The rest of the squad here, Terrace Reed Jr., true freshman. He's got nice upside, just like McDaniel. Bright future. Joey Baker, transfer from Duke. Every other game, he'll give you some scoring, but he's got to do better. He's got to knock down more shots. Cheddar looks decent when he's out there, but he can't get more minutes. He must not be able to do it in practice, or they don't feel good about his defense. Whatever it is, he's kind of a fan favorite, and one that people pick to say, get him out there more. I get that, but they don't do it for whatever reason. And the rest of these guys, Isaiah Barnes, he's not playing much. They put him in there against Purdue. He seemed like the game was a little bit too fast for him. He's still young, just a redshirt freshman, but, you haven't seen much from him. Yo-Yo, Yusuf Kayat has been banged up, but we haven't seen much from him either. Jace Howard is in his third year. Great enthusiasm and support. Love the smile and everything that he brings to the game. He's a depth player for Michigan. I think that's what we have seen from him. I don't expect much more. And then Greg Glenn III, he's played the least out of everyone. So he's a freshman, true freshman. And you just don't know. Sometimes it takes a year, sometimes it takes 2 years, but, you start seeing something. A point guard's the one where you give guys the most breaks when they're true freshmen because they, so much is asked for them. But those are my thoughts on the guys out there. Now we're going to get to some recruiting. And I see there's some folks that have some thoughts, and we'll see sitting here on Wednesday talking about National Signing Day. That'll be fun. Jason talking about Nyckoles Harbaugh says Michigan haters think he's going to Oregon or South Carolina. Well, he just was visiting Oregon, and South Carolina has been putting the full court press on him. I mean, they really are going after him. So, I mean, I don't, you don't necessarily, you might be right about the haters, but I mean, Oregon, when you factor in track in Oregon and Phil Knight, Oregon is always going to be a factor. These nuts getting in on basketball says T. Will is like Dickinson. His game seems to have plateaued, if not regressed. McDaniel forced into a tough position. No thanks to Howard inability to recruit and coach guards. Yeah, and the injury didn't help to Llewellyn there. The name-calling ones, I'm not sure. I'm going to go into that one. D says he would like to see Harbaugh come here, but I just don't see it going our way. Meanwhile, Jason said we should get Davis and Harbaugh. Talking about Jaden Davis, who's not for this upcoming class. He's for 24, but the two top guys, and I'm right there with you, Jason. If you're saying, Dennis, right now, you can have 2 recruits commit to Michigan and come into Michigan, who are you picking? I would pick number 1, Jaden Davis, quarterback out of Providence Day in North Carolina. He would be my number 1 selection. Number 2, I would pick Nyckoles Harbaugh, the wide receiver, tight end, defensive end from D.C., 5-star, track star. Those are the 2 guys that I want the most. So Jason talking about Davis and Harbaugh. Nepotism. I've given my thoughts on that before. Courtney doesn't even want Harbaugh. He's less than average wide receiver or tight end and doesn't want to play edge, which he is good at. Yeah, well, he's a little bit too young for me to be like he's average. When you run like he runs, and he's got times that are making guys that are just track stars blush. And you trust me, Courtney, you want Harbaugh. When you say you don't even want Harbaugh, you mean I really want Harbaugh. That's what you mean. Yeah, people are going after you a little bit, Courtney. I get it. This D's, come on, man. You can't, in basketball, you can't replicate size and, and speed. He's got size and speed. You want that. Uh-oh, Chase. Bringing it up. I brought my bell. I can't find it. You're bringing TCU up, Chase. I don't get the gut feeling very often, but even in the fourth quarter of TCU, I wasn't even mad. I just got this feeling that 2023 was a title. Okay, so what am I getting here? Chase is saying that he wasn't mad about the loss against TCU because he knows next year is going to be the year for Michigan. And he doesn't even feel like that. Okay. Okay, Chase. Now I'm feeling it. I think people are picking up where you're at. Chase is now going back to yesteryear in recruiting, wishing that Michigan had Xavier Worthy. They had him. What do you mean, Chase? They had Xavier Worthy. And it says then JJ could have been dominant. Thing is, they had Worthy. They had him in their hands. And slipped through. Courtney saying that in his judgment that Harbaugh's hands are average and that he can't block and can't run routes. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't watched. I can't say anything about his hands. Like, if you've watched him play and you're watching film and you're like, should have had that one. Well, then you can. I get it. You're evaluating him. I don't know where your evaluation comes from. I think he plays wide receiver, so I don't know how much he's been asked to block in high school. He's got the size. And look, there's Gronks who can do everything, and Kelsey. And meanwhile, at Michigan, you are going to have to block a little bit. When you say he can't run routes, I don't know. When there's let's say a bias, but maybe there is a bias. I don't know if I'm not saying this is from you, Courtney, but I've seen this in recruiting before. And it goes back to, I remember there was a wide receiver that went to Ohio State named Ted Ginn Jr. And I think Michigan, someone had asked, I was talking with a recruiting analyst. It was a radio show, and somebody called in and said, well, why doesn't Michigan want Ted Ginn Jr.? And the analyst said, Ted Ginn Jr. is just a track star. You don't want Ted Ginn Jr. He's going to Ohio State. He's just a track star. Well, I just thought, track star. And I was looking at his numbers. I'm like, well, he's really fast. And I remember asking the guy, and he said, yeah, he's just a track guy. He's not a football guy. There's football guys that run track, and then there's track guys that play football, and he's the latter. Now, Ted Ginn Jr., I say that, and I think it's true about what he said about the track guys and the football guys running track, except Ted Ginn Jr. was pretty good at Ohio State. He was pretty good in the pros. I mean, he made a lot of money, at least in the pros, however you want to. He was good pro. I'm not saying he was a great wide receiver or anything, but so that's what you have to determine. It is Nyckoles Harbaugh a great football player and also a great track star? I mean, is he just this most unbelievable dual sport athletes? They're out there. Like, you got Bo Jackson. You're saying, Bo Jackson's just a track guy. I don't know. He is. Bo Jackson, just a track guy. Ronaldo Nehemiah, just a track guy. Is this a bullet Bob Hayes? I don't know. Like, if you're going to play defensive or in wide receiver, you got to be able to determine that. I don't know that answer about if Nyckoles Harbaugh is a track guy that just wants to play football. Harbaugh should come if he truly cares about academics. Yeah, well, Michigan's got that going for him. Courtney, again, questioning his hands. Chase saying, I still bet he's made more plays solo than ours combined. I don't know. Are we talking about Nyckoles Harbaugh right now? Yeah, I don't know. So Courtney has evaluated him and doesn't like the wide receivers' skills. The coach has weighed in. I don't really care one way or another for Davis or Harbaugh. I don't have time for the diva energy. Yeah, I know you say that. I know it. And yet, it sometimes you have to put up with a little bit of that, coach. I mean, come on, you do a little bit. The great Hadley, Harbaugh for Heisman to Michigan. Now, see, Hadley knows how to get behind these recruits and what's going on. So we got in one corner Hadley, who's talking about future greatness for Nyckoles Harbaugh in the maize and blue. And then we have Courtney, who says, take a guy just because he can run go routes. Okay, no more from Courtney. Harbaugh doesn't want to play defensive end, just offense. He just wants to run go routes and go to the Olympics. Look, that might be true. I don't know any of that. The coaches ought to be able to determine that. I mean, it's the one thing about we watch the film and look at the recruiting things and, to find out, if this guy wants to be a great football player, that's something. I'm talking about his hands and everything. There is tape. You can evaluate it out there. I'm not a high school tape guy yet, being able to look at it. And that's what Courtney's saying. If you look at his film, you can see that. So maybe what Courtney is saying, he put in the work on the tape, and that is his determination. But there you go. That's where we're at when it comes down to recruiting. Take a couple more. Yeah, I don't know, OT, what makes Davis a diva? Just because he hasn't committed to Michigan. See, that's why. Well, he's like, North Carolina will call, or he'll say Clemson's still in the mix. The one thing, he might be really smart. He may have committed to Michigan already, but then he had, the Harbaugh situation after the bowl game. And I know people don't want to hear that. I'm going to make, I've talked, and sometimes I talk too much about it, but, that wasn't, that didn't make the Michigan program and make Harbaugh, didn't make everything look so stable. Everything that's gone on this month. I don't need to go through. Where do we sit at about? There's about 4 or 5 things that other people are saying. Wait a second about Michigan. I mean, let's be honest about it. Now, we can all explain away all of the things. Doing it for leverage, doing it for the kids, doing it for the coach. That didn't mean anything. That was just a text. That was just a hamburger. This means nothing with the NCAA. That wasn't anything to do with us. That was a rogue coach. I mean, all of these things can be explained away. But if you're some high school kid, you're pretty smart, and you're like, oh, maybe I'm just going to wait a little longer. So that doesn't mean you're a diva. I think that can mean you're smart when it comes down to that. So I disagree. Even though I like Antoine, I don't see the diva characteristics in what he's saying about Jaden Davis. And I would say the same thing about Nyckoles Harbaugh. If I'm the best, one of the very best high school football players, and that's the way I have been rated by the recruiting services across the board, I would be looking for, if I cared about track, I would be looking for the best track. And if I cared about football, I would be looking for the best combinations of track and football. And if I cared about academics, I would look for the best combinations of academics, football, and track. I would be looking for those 3 things. Meanwhile, if it was my kid, I would say, I want you to you've earned this. Let's go the best track, football, academics, and the team that's going to offer you the most money up front before you ever throw a ball or catch a ball. Let's go for those 4 things. And that's what I would be looking at. Now, what are those 4 things? I know Michigan's not the part where I think Michigan is not in it with Harbaugh is they are not offering money up front. What we know about Oregon is, let's be honest, they are. Oregon is offering money up front. They do have a nice track school. Now, football and academics, look at Michigan's in there. Even though Michigan's not offering money beforehand, they're saying, look, you come in, you get it after. Pretty quick. I don't know what their pitch is. We just can't tell you that you're getting it before. Where Oregon's saying, come on in. We are giving it to you before. There's the distinction. And I don't know what South Carolina and Maryland are selling. But Michigan is selling football, track, and academics. And the maize in blue. And the stadium. And the experience. That's what Michigan is selling. And, there's going to be a lot of kids that are buying that. The problem is these 5 stars, people are saying, look, you've earned the money. You've already earned $100,000 to $1 million. Take it. I know it gets down to that. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we're saying when it comes down to the track part about it. Rashawn Gary was a diva. I don't know what made him a diva. I mean, he was the number 1 player in the country. Does that mean he's a diva? He came to Michigan without getting money under the table. I mean, are you a diva if you're taking money? Let me think about who some of the divas are. The first diva that I really can think of was a guy by the name of Terrell Owens. He was a diva, but he was a great player. And after that, somebody like Antonio Brown, a lot of wide receivers are divas. Maybe it started with Keyshawn Johnson. Well, they went to interview him and said, Keyshawn, are you looking for the best spot you can go for the team? And Keyshawn said, throw me the damn ball. I was like, what? I want the ball. We could probably come up with another list of 7 or 8. But Keyshawn, Terrell Owens, Antonio Bryant. There's a big 3. You'd be hard-pressed to come up with 3 bigger divas than those 3. Those are 3 pretty good ones. You might want to put Moss in there. He had some diva-ish behavior. Dion, was he a diva? Michigan has money too. Tom Brady, a diva. All right. Chase has seen Harbaugh talk a big negative about Oregon. Oh, the state. But the money can change a lot. Ocho Cinco. He was a diva. A lot of these divas I liked. I didn't like Antonio Brown after he forced his way out of Pittsburgh. He was a great wide receiver. I don't know. Tom Brady doesn't seem to me very diva-ish. Dion, I mean, what is it? Dion was a great player and flashy. Does that mean that you're a diva? Or that you talk a lot? He said, don't draft me Detroit. I won't go. So, can we get a little bit of a diva there? Eli Manning, a diva? Somebody talking about Harbaugh's what he wants with school. He wants to major in some kind of medical field. So that's a positive for Michigan. Better academics than Oregon. Yeah, I mean, the academics, look, I don't downplay that. There's a lot of kids, man, like these guys. A lot of these kids have their heads screwed on straight, man. They know what they want. And education is part of it. And for some of them. The tough part is that when you're a 5-star, man, you're thinking that, I can always go back anywhere. I'll go to graduate school somewhere. I'll be in the NFL for 10 years. And I can go back. I get my degree. And, you could make up a case for anything. But yeah, it helps. I would agree that the Favre. How about Aaron Rodgers? Now there's some quarterbacks that are divas for sure. Favre was a diva. And Aaron Rodgers is totally a diva. I see that for sure. Jason is saying academics is number 1 for Harbaugh. Well, as you know, for people, there are recruiting analysts that are like, Sherlock Holmes, and they're making the calls. And I put my trust in the Maize and Blue Review when it comes down to any forecasts or some things like that. And yet I still, when it comes down to the big guys, I'll make predictions. I'm going to make a prediction on Jaden Davis, and I'm going to make a prediction on Nyckoles Harbaugh. First, Jaden Davis, the quarterback out of Providence Day in Carolina. Michigan has been his favorite. I think he took a step back because of this month and all the things that went on with Jim Harbaugh. But now that things have settled down, I think him saying last week, I saw the quotes where he said he's in constant contact with Jim Harbaugh. I think that Jaden Davis will pick Michigan. I think Jaden Davis is going to go to Michigan. I think he is going to be a quarterback that will be the highest rated quarterback that Michigan's ever got. And I think that he will be the headliner for the class of 24. And I think Michigan's going to get him. Now, let's go to Nyckoles Harbaugh. Nyckoles Harbaugh, the track star. He is a track star, but he has his academics that he is looking at. What about the football? What about the football, Michael, for Nyckoles Harbaugh? And they're saying Michigan's like, hey, you can run track. You can play quarterback. Nyckoles, if you want to, why don't you come on in? Heck, Nyckoles, you can be the track coach if you want to. Do anything you want. Nyckoles Harbaugh, the prediction? Michigan. Nyckoles Harbaugh to Michigan. That's my pick. I think the combination of football, academics, and track, that they've given them enough information about the history of Michigan track and what they have been able to do in the Big Ten for the Olympics to be able to make him confident enough that he can fulfill the best version of himself over the track and field building and out on the gridiron. If he wants to start at wide receiver, fine. He wants to be tight end, defensive end, whatever that is going to be, he will figure it out, and Michigan will figure it out, and that's going to be the decider for him. When he says there were a lot of schools that were telling me that, I need to start out at defensive. No, Michigan said, come on in. And when I talked to the track and field people, I connected. And academics, what else do I need to say? And he'll be part of this Michigan class. So that's my prediction. Courtney is talking about that it's between Michigan and the good guys. It's going. I'm just coming out. You might. This is the first time I'm going on record with these two guys, so we'll see what my percentage is. I haven't made any predictions in recruiting. It's a new thing for me. Davis, Michigan. Nyckoles Harbaugh, Michigan. Let's see if I can go 2 for 2 and how it's going to go down. People are getting in these reports. It's reported that Harbaugh hit it off well with the Michigan track and field coach. Look at that. So lots of positives going our way. But SC, Maryland, of course, Oregon in the mix. Yeah. You mean these teams? Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. Oregon, Michigan, South Carolina, and Maryland. I kept seeing USC, and I'm like, what? USC's making a push. They have their whole coaching staff. South Carolina, when you talk about making a push, they are putting the full court press on Harbaugh. And can you just imagine the kind of offers this guy's going to get over the next 48 hours? Yeah, Nyckoles, what did Phil Knight? Did Phil Knight fly in, helicopter over? Did they bring him into? I remember, and there's a lot of schools that do things like this, but Oregon apparently can really, really do it up with the lights and the pomp and the circumstance when you get into Eugene. Like, the teams will put their name up on the scoreboard, or they'll put their name up on the building or something. But when you walk into, I've been to Eugene, but I didn't go to the Nike facility. But apparently you can walk in there and Phil Knight, I don't know. They just have $100 bills, $3 billion spread across the floor for Nyckoles with a pair of track shoes in the middle and a football helmet. I don't know. That's the kind of stuff that they do. And then as soon as he touches one of the $100 bills, fireworks. I don't know. It's going to be it's going to be a tough recruiting battle. I really don't know what South Carolina's pitch is. Hey, we'll name our new Gamecock after you. I think South Carolina's pitch is going to have to be straight up money. Just like Maryland. Maryland, the hometown team, you got that. Being a hometown guy. I don't know what his family situation is, but hey, everybody can stay here and watch. Stay here and watch you, Nyckoles. I'm crossing South Carolina and Maryland off. This is between Michigan and Oregon. And does he really care about academics and football or in track? Or is he looking for that immediate payday? Yeah, I've been reading I don't want to say self-help books, but a lot of they say the hard choices are the ones that really, the easy ones hurt you. The hard choices are the ones that benefit you. So when he's just doing the Angels and all the cash and the football helmets and everybody telling him how great he's going to be out in Oregon, and Michigan's sales pitch is, man, come here and play football and run track and work hard in school. Nyckoles, that's what he's got on this shoulder right over here. And then he's got Oregon with a bunch of circus music and, throwing off. They got those, what are they called? Those $100 bill machines that just spit the money out. I want one of those. They got that shooting off one shoulder, and he's got the other one is just Michigan. I think he's going to pick Michigan. Okay. The next 48 hours will be a lot of recruiting talk as I've morphed into a recruiting analyst and a predictor of things that are going on in recruiting. I'll come back and either double down or will I have to walk back my predictions? I don't think you walk them back. You make them, you make them. I'll tell you how I feel about them tomorrow at 1. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at 1 o'clock tomorrow. See you over on the Den on the Maize and Blue Review.